Hey, good weekend to you. Welcome to Leading Edge. Welcome to March, after all, people. Ahead on our program, the rest of our discussion with an over half-century broadcast news veteran in our town who was told recently by this big behemoth national radio owner, your services are no longer needed. Well, we have some news updated about London Mitchell's next chapter. But up first, district drawers down in Columbus have now turned their sights on Ohio's congressional districts. That's even though their work on state Senate and House districts has been ruled unconstitutional a couple of times to date. Their latest state district map still under review with the question, why can't these guys just read the Constitution and follow it? I mean, they're lawmakers, after all. And against that backdrop, a couple of members of Toledo City Council have their sights set on Columbus in a seat in the Ohio House of Representatives. We chatted with one of them, Michelle Grimm, a couple of weeks back. And today I welcome in Nick Komives, Democrat, Toledo City Council. Good to see you again, sir. It's been too long. First off, with state district maps, and we're recording late in the week, things could change before we even air. But with these maps being changed and tweaked, and you guys having already had to file, Nick Komives, I'm confused, and you're the guy running. So what are they telling you about where things stand?
Well, for what it's worth, I'm also confused. I realize I learned this week that the Board of Elections tossed our names off of the potential ballot at this point because there's so much confusion about what's going to happen with these House and Senate district races. So, at this point, we're all sort of holding out and waiting to find out if they're going to get their act together and draw maps that are fair. Ohioans across the board believe in fairness. They voted for fair districts, and it's really not difficult to make this possible. We had fourth graders appear at some of these committee hearings to present maps that were more fair than the ones we're getting.
There are no shortage of independent maps made by people who are interested, who have said, okay, what are the provisions of the Constitution? What do we have to do here? Give me the map, give me the population numbers, give me the partisan makeup, let's go. And they've gotten it done. It can be done if you have the proper will. The district, the last one, well, I don't know about this because at one time it looked like, Nick, you were in a so-called safe district. Some districts are going to definitely lean Democrat. Many are going to lean definitely Republican. And that being the case, the race would really be, in your case, the Democratic primary, which is making this very interesting. Both you and Ms. Grimm, both members of Toledo City Council, have both received at least some blowback for asking voters just this past fall to serve in the city, and now saying early 2022, we'd like to go elsewhere. How do you respond to that?
Well, I'd first start by saying that had neither Ms. Grimm or myself filed for those seats, nobody would have filed for those seats. So somebody has to run for the district. But I would also say that I've served 4 years at this point. In my fifth year on city council. I think I've certainly proven through my track record that I'm a fierce fighter for our environment, for our infrastructure, for fighting our state government to make sure that we get the money that we deserve. And so this is just a natural extension, in my opinion. The seats have opened. The opportunity is now, and I really want to go down to Columbus to fight for Toledo to make sure that we're getting our tax dollars back from the state, because we have so many needs that are being unmet because they've shifted the way that they fund our local governments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, and they've tried to be punitive in the process too, because we have those traffic cameras, and of course, any money you make from that, we're going to take from you. In Columbus, like, no, you can't take. Don't get me started. You have served several years in city council, and let's face it, your party enjoys domination locally. Mm-hmm. Whatever happens with these districts, you'll give me this, you're going to ride into a minority party situation with a very activist far-right majority calling the shots. So what can you get done in that scenario?
Well, I think the reality is I'm not going to be able to go there and necessarily do some of the progressive things I've done here, like passing source of income protections for residents of Toledo. But what I can do is really make some influence on funding streams and where money goes for capital projects, and really fighting to make sure that Toledo gets their fair share of the tax dollars that we send to Columbus every year. It's our job as lawmakers down in Columbus to make sure that we're bringing that money back. I think that, we're going to see a lot of new blood in this process go to Columbus, and I'm hoping that the coalition that forms here in Northwest Ohio is one that can really bring money back to Toledo.
There are some issues that supersede, I think, politics, although everything, let's face it, Nick, these days is, but I keep looking at Teresa Fetter and the stuff she got done while in the extreme minority. If you're just counting noses, and the stuff she got done and continues to get done down there. And again, if there's the proper will to serve, if you put public service over politics, you can get stuff done. So a couple of issues. Guns a good one, because as you saw just this week, state lawmakers passed legislation that says carriers of concealed weapons no longer need a nice license. Background checks, 8 hours of training. Pshaw, who needs it? Law enforcement, for the most part, doesn't like this stuff. What do you do there?
I don't know what to say, honestly, because it's almost like the folks in Columbus are just not listening at all to what people want, because the overwhelming majority of us believe that background checks are important, believe that, we should have some measures in place, and they do the exact opposite repeatedly. It's like they push the envelope as far as possible. The reality is, of course, if I were in Columbus right now, I wouldn't really be getting a whole lot done to push back with them because of the super majority that they hold. But I'm hopeful that with the new fair maps, we might actually be able to make some headway and stop these types of laws that are against the will of the people and also dangerous to our public health.
Well, and I want to clarify here. When Nick Komives says, when most of us think there should be background, he's not, if somebody's sitting out there saying, well, most of you being what? Most Democrats, most liberals, most progressive? No, most Ohioans in state poll after state poll.
After state poll, after national poll, after national poll. I mean, it's just across the board. We believe in at least some protections.
Yeah. All right, I got to take a break. We're on a roll here. I got a couple other state things, but folks, he's still serving on Toledo City Council, and there's some big stuff happening down there in the Power Tower. We're going to talk about it. He is Nick Komives. This is Leading Edge. We're back with more right after this. We're back in Leading Edge. This is Nick Komives. He's been with us before. I meant to look it up. It's been way too long. He now wants to serve in the Ohio legislature if they can ever get their act together and figure out what district he would be in. And I don't, with the Supreme Court involved, I guess there's a chance. Left to their own volition, I don't know. All right, we're doing some state stuff, and then in the next few minutes, we're going to shift gears to some city stuff. Maybe because of the pandemic, Nick Komives, more parents are involved in their kids' education. They were forced to in many cases, and that's good. That's good. But in what some see as a purely political ploy, many parents are now being encouraged to take control of curriculum, especially when it covers issues of, well, everything from sexual identity to race relations or other important issues that are now part of the culture wars in this country. What does State Representative Nick Komives do in that case?
Yeah, I'm nervous about this sort of line that we're heading down, because I think that it signals, some historical, they don't want to teach us our history because they don't want us to realize that this type of censorship is really problematic, because it has led to an awful lot of violence in our history and potentially wars. And so I'm concerned about what this means for our country as we continue this dialogue. I think that the reality is that oftentimes a party that likes to say that they're about small government loves to be really big and tell us all types of things about what we can say, what we can do. And this is just another example of that. Rather than actually giving people the freedom to learn and to use critical thinking skills that they will learn while they're in school, to objectively decide what is important and what has happened throughout history, they're basically saying, we're going to rewrite this history. We're going to whitewash it and make sure that people don't actually know what really truly happened throughout our history, why the dynamics that exist today exist. And that's really what this is about.
Well, in some cases, there are people who want books thrown out because there's bad words in the books. and I like to stay above using bad words. But Nick, I also drove a school bus for 3.5 years up until this past Christmas. Your kids know those words.
Right,
I'm just telling you.
right.
Sometimes they
And they
aim
will
them.
learn them with that device that you've put in their hands, you
Yeah,
know? I mean, that's the reality
sometimes
of
they
how it
aim
works.
them at the bus driver. But okay, let's do some local stuff because time's getting short here. Nick Komives, my
Sure.
guest. You guys passed a budget that has been described by one of your members, an accountant, I'll point out, as a ticking time bomb, one which continues, quoting her, deficit spending. And you, Mr. Komives, voted in favor. So why aren't the current concerns of those who voted against the budget, and there were 3 of them, why aren't those concerns legitimate, or are they?
Well, I think the reality is that we have one person who makes a lot of claims about what this budget is going to do and says a lot of, in my opinion, rhetoric, use the terms, this adds unnecessary bureaucracy, this is an inflated budget, these types of terminology. And I think it's really
double-digit pay increases for people sitting behind desks. That was
sure. I mean, we've been giving pay increases across the board because we have historically not been doing those for multiple decades. And so we've been trying to right the wrongs. And I think that it's important to recognize that all work has value and that we show our value by paying people what they deserve and what they're worth. And that's why we've made it a priority within the city to provide pay raises, because we understand that people are providing services to people and we want to make sure that we value them. But I want to get back to that first point and just at least acknowledge the fact that there's one person saying a lot of things that are scary about this budget, but it's just one person, and it's I think
it's Katie Moline, folks, just so we're not, if you don't follow this stuff closely enough, it's Ms. Moline, who is a certified public accountant.
And so we should take a step back and just recognize that there are lots more people who are not saying these types of things, and in fact refuting them. Legal opinion after legal opinion that we received, referral after referral from the finance department, all refuted everything that she claimed. She just kept carrying those claims all the way through the voting.
Let me do this for you, Nick. Are you still moving money from capital improvements over to general fund? Because that stuff needs to stop. Yes, and I thought we had been told it would.
Yeah, we were hoping to have that happen this year. And I think that many of us on council really tried our best to shave off what we could from transferring from the CIP, but we were not in a position to do that. I think part of this goes back to that early discussion about what our state was funding us. We used to close the gap between transferring our CIP by what we used to get from the state government, but now we don't get that anymore. So we've all been adjusting since that time period, and it's been a tough adjustment. And I think that the reality is we keep operational budgets flowing, and that's really what's going to keep the basic services for folks. But we do have to have an investment. I think we're fortunate to have the ARPA money this year, but it means that we have to really get down to this and stop transferring from the CIP for sure.
Well, yeah, you guys, I mean, between voters approving an income tax increase, which they did, and then the big windfall of federal money. If the city's finances go south on this thing now, you all deserve to get blown out, and it shouldn't happen if we're all doing our homework and being responsible. I wanted to get to the leader of the mayor's anti-gun violence program has announced his resignation, but we're out of time. But I think he's going to be on my program next week, so tune in for that. In the meantime, I'm going to thank Nick Komives, member of Toledo City Council, now serving in his 5th year in that body, for being with us, keeping us on the leading edge of his interests in serving the state legislature and the current goings on at City Hall. Good to see you, my friend. Take care.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You bet. And when I come back, we wrap up our chat with London Mitchell on the radio for over half a century and on Leading Edge next.